Hey everybody, welcome back. This is part 3 of our E3 recap here at GAMbIT Magazine, and I am joined once again by my co-host over there, Miles. Say hi.
Hey everybody.
And today we are going to be focusing on a little more of the indie stuff. Yesterday we talked about a lot of Sony stuff, and the day before we focused on Microsoft and Nintendo. So we're going to finish out the day with some of the cool stuff going on the indie scene. So I'll let Miles get us started.
Yeah, we're going to end up with the indie games. First up, we have a few more of the bigger multi-platform titles to talk about. We'll start it out with something that was kind of behind closed doors. I didn't get a very long look at it, but I think you got to see a little more of Mad Max.
Mad Max, yeah. Interesting game from a conceptual point for everything point. Mad Max was a fantastic film that did very, very well. Was not expecting any sort of movie tie-in game to happen with a movie like that. It just didn't seem like it would work. And this one takes place in the same world, but it's different. There's no way you can capture what made Mad Max Fury Road special in a game format. So what you have here is essentially a gigantic open world where you're playing as Max and you're just driving around, kind of surviving. I think the entire premise takes place in and around Gastown. We saw that in the film a little bit. That's where they were headed to originally. So in this game is going to kind of open up a little bit more of that story and who runs Gastown and what's going on there. I don't know where this falls into the timeline. I don't know if it's a prequel or a sequel. But one thing is, it is very pretty. It is very car heavy. But being a desert kind of open world game, there's a lot of empty space around. So I don't know how that's going to translate well into kind of a cohesive kind of gaming experience. It kind of feels to me almost like it's Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, where there was a lot of ocean floating around, except now you're just kind of in the desert.
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of make a point talking about how big the world is going to be, but that kind of seemed, the little bits that I saw, it was just kind of you standing in the middle of nowhere, maybe with a car. But yeah, we'll see what they have to do. I was just thinking, still, we don't see a lot of really video game tie-ins to movies lately. I wonder how much developers have seen that maybe it doesn't work well. I know that a lot sell somewhat well because people love the movie so much, but maybe over time, they've realized and gamers have realized that it's usually just not worth it at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I can't recall too many movie licensed games coming out this generation. I don't know if it's because the resources to program on PS4 and Xbox One are still, really high and it's really difficult. But even on the Wii U, I haven't even seen a lot of stuff on 360 or PS3. There hasn't been that many tie games. I think Mad Max is the first major kind of one. That's weird. That is strange.
Yeah. So, all right, moving right along, we have Rainbow Six Siege. This is one that I got my hands on for a bit. It feels very true to previous Rainbow Six games with a few kind of added items that you have to help you out. We got to do kind of an attack and defend gameplay there, where they give you some fun things. You have kind of the heartbeat sensors that I thought was kind of interesting, that it's not something that's on a gun like they did in Modern Warfare, Call of Duty. It's something you pull up by yourself, and it kind of takes a minute to load, and so you feel very vulnerable as you're doing it, and it doesn't really tag enemies, so you have to be able to communicate to your team where they're coming in from. But another really cool thing with that is when you buy Siege, it comes with Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2, which 2 is something I still play with my friends from time to time. It's just a fun one to go back to and pop in and do some terrorist hunt with that. But it looks fantastic. Lots of fun tools. There's kind of a little remote control, camera kind of thing to find, where you want to set up and where the enemy is. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, Rainbow Six has always been a cool series. It's always been heavy team-based. kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of that. I know that Siege, this one, is actually essentially a sequel to Patriots, which actually was canceled, which was originally going to be the first next gen game on PS4 and Xbox One. I don't know what happened to that one. All I know is kind of, I guess the tone shifted or whatever, and it kind of got more into this. So it was nice what we saw, what I saw being played, and as well, it should be another fun co-op game. I'm a big fan of anything that's co-op, especially campaign-wise.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see. We also had a look at another Tom Clancy game, The Division, which looked a lot like Rainbow Six, same kind of style, different setting. It seemed it was kind of a post-apocalyptic. You're the last defense against kind of everything falling into chaos. Another really pretty game though, and so I don't. It's kind of strange that it looks and feels so much like Rainbow, and it's coming out at around the same time. I think they may be shooting themselves in the foot just a little bit with that.
It's a lot of Tom Clancy at once. I don't know if it was originally supposed to come out at the same time as Six. I think this one was supposed to come out a little bit earlier, but I know it got pushed back. I know the closed beta just went live today as we're recording this. I mean, it looks interesting. It's kind of when we saw it last year, it kind of felt kind of like an MMO almost, just this really large kind of modern day World of Warcraft almost, but it's changed a lot. So the more I see of it, the more it is getting exciting. I am just afraid that if it comes out too near of the other Rainbow Six, people are going to get confused with the titles.
Yeah. All right, we have Walking Dead. This was a huge booth that was kind of outside the halls. We got a little bit of a look at it. There was a huge line to be able to actually get your hands on it, but it looked like they were kind of using their own hardware for it. They had their own visor, and then we saw some people with it seemed like kind of early build shotgun kind of thing that had big sensors on it. But definitely a lot of people around there. They paid for zombies to walk around the show floor, which was a lot of fun too. But I'm very curious to see exactly what this is going to become.
It was interesting. Yeah, I figured it would be some sort of Oculus thing or something else, but it did look like they were doing their very own thing, and it was nice. I mean, that's a big franchise to get behind you if you're going to do something, because that's something that everyone knows. I know they had a gun peripheral that was tied into the visor as well, and there were huge lines for it the whole show. So I don't know how soon it's going to be ready, because from what we saw, it was a very, very basic setup. Looked like dev kits being set up. So we'll see what it is and what it does, but that could be something very cool, living in the Walking Dead VR, because that's kind of what VR is kind of built for, that first person experience. You're actually in the world. So that could be something really cool.
Yeah, and I know the Telltale story games of the Walking Dead franchise did really well. They did a really great, putting their interpretation on things and putting you in that same world and kind of crossing with those characters that we know from the comics and from the TV show. So I really hope that they can kind of keep that engaging storyline and not just have kind of a Left 4 Dead zombie shooter, which would still be fun.
It's cool, but it's how they implement it. If it's going to be just a generic shooter, or if it's going to be something more in-depth. I know the system they use, I just pulled it up, is the Star VR system. And the specs on it listed that they're using is pretty incredible. We have panoramic 5K images, full... the field of view on this system is said to knock Oculus out of the water. So that's cool. But it depends on how fast they can get this platform to the market, because you're going to have the same problem you had with Betamax and VHS. Betamax was better, VHS came out cheaper and was well ingrained. Same thing with Blu-ray and the rest of them. Every time there's sort of format war, and the VR is basically a format war. Whoever gets to market at a reasonable time is going to have the advantage.
Yeah, that and right there, that's an interesting point because it looks like Morpheus is going to come out a little bit sooner, but Oculus has this kind of gargantuan name behind it, and a lot of really heavy hitting people that are getting behind this. You know that, and with the whole Xbox and Windows 10 compatibility, it's going to be a really interesting race for the VR crown.
Yeah, I agree.
See, we got another good look at the new Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain. Looked really great. Added some new features, you know, and you see a lot of the ones that have been with the series from the beginning. Um, you know, you got to see walking on little mech kind of things, and you know, being able to go through and tag people and you know, bring people up in those, you know, people you knocked out up in those little balloons. But it just same kind of looks like solid fun and another strong pillar in the franchise.
Yeah, in the demo they had, it was right on the floor. It wasn't behind closed doors. It was a big 40-minute demo. It was long, so this is ready to go. Um, and visually, it looked great. I mean, I have Ground Zeroes, the basically the glorified demo for this game, and Phantom Pain looks a lot better than what we had originally. So I'm a big fan of Metal Gear Solid as it is. I have it all the way back to the original on NES. So we'll see what happens. I'm liking it. You know, it's another one of those things where it kind of goes large open world, kind of do your own thing. So I'm excited, and hopefully we should be getting it very soon.
Another one that was kind of a surprise to me was a big showing for Dishonored 2 coming out of the Bethesda booth. I thought the first game had a really interesting aesthetic, some interesting game mechanics, but I didn't think it really did that well, at least not well enough to warrant a sequel. But it was there. It had a strong showing. It looked really beautiful. Again, really focusing on the facial textures. You know, you could see the layers that just went into the eye itself. You know, that's where we're drawn to look at, and they have really kind of nailed those details that make it a really lifelike feature.
Yeah, the world of Dishonored 2 looks really cool. The character design and the styles, the way they're built, almost has this kind of cartoony quality to it, but still real. We didn't get to see any actual gameplay of Dishonored 2. They had a big booth area showing off costumes and actual props and all that kind of stuff. We did get a very nice cinematic trailer to kind of get us teased for it. I have Dishonored. I've put in a few hours, and for some reason, I just can't get into it. I don't know if it was what it was. I'm going to try to get into it again, but it just didn't hook me, and I didn't think either that it sold as well to warrant a sequel. But I mean, I'm glad it's getting one. I thought the world of Dishonored was great. For whatever reason, I just personally couldn't get into it. So we'll see if Dishonored 2 can get that ball rolling, and I'm going to have to go back and this summer go through the first one.
Mass Effect, I was also a big announcement, but not a big showing on the floor. I actually didn't see where they were revealing anything there at all. I know a lot of people were let down by the ending of the last one, so much so that they had to change some and give you new options in some DLC. But I thought that was going to be the end of the series, and here we have another entry.
That's the thing with these kind of games. Even when they want it to be the end, if they sell, the publisher is going to demand another one, and we're running into that with Mass Effect. I am a big fan of the Mass Effect series, a big fan of what they've done, but I'm less and less excited every time they announce something new, just because I want things to end. I'm not that kind of gamer that demands another game just because it's good. I like my stories to finish, and I don't know what they're going to do with Mass Effect 4. I figured it would have a bigger presence on the floor because that's a big name game with a big series. But I don't know. I just didn't see the push that I figured I would from the companies there for it.
All right, we have a fairly big presence too that I was kind of surprised about was Mirror's Edge Catalyst. This was the sequel to a game that is fairly old. I want to say 6 or 7 years at least.
I think it
That
was one of the early games of last generation, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think so. And that game had it seemed like it had much more of a kind of cult following than a really kind of heavy hitting household name. I think maybe a lot of people got it on Steam or something afterward and really got a look at this world and its kind of unique mechanics, especially at the time.
Mirror's Edge was gorgeous for the aesthetic it laid out. Uh, and I think it critically did really well. I didn't think it sold as much, but personally, I didn't like the game whatsoever. And I think it's falling into that nostalgia trap, I think. Mirror's Edge was never that great. The gunplay was atrocious. The parkour elements in first person mode just don't work and will induce headaches in most people. We kind of saw that if you played Dying Light, for anyone out there that played that kind of same parkour element. It just doesn't quite feel natural, but I like the world that they were in for Mirror's Edge. The story was pretty basic. Everything about it was pretty basic, but I think that goes into being an early title for last generation because they're still learning stuff. I am glad to see another one. I love the character, I love the design, so I am interested, and I know that Part 2, this new one, Catalyst, has gotten rid of all of the gunplay completely. So what we're getting here basically is a parkour simulator. So if they can pull it off, great, but my fear is that every time I go back to play Mirror's Edge, I end up getting sick after an hour. So we'll see how they can do that in first person.
Let's see. We also have Batman Arkham Knight, which was a continuation of the storyline, but getting a look at it, it's going to have upgraded next gen graphics. I think this early in this generation, it's not going to be a whole lot different than the later games of the last generation. I think over time, as developers figure out ways to be more efficient with the computing power we have, that things will continue to evolve. So Arkham Knight really didn't seem to change the formula. Again, we have a big open world, but again, maybe that's a good thing if fans of the series have been in love with it from the beginning. And honestly, I couldn't really think of what else significantly that they could change.
Yeah, consistency is key with that series. The first two games were really great. The third game was done by a different developer, so it kind of was a mixed bag. I know the difference here is the world is just bigger, larger, but also the vehicle implementation now. So you have the tank or the Batmobile that can move around. I am, fingers crossed, hoping that this is the final installment. I know Rocksteady said it was their final installment. It just dropped today. The reviews have been fantastic, of course, for it because this is a solid brand. But if you were reading around on the internet right now, or if you have a PC, that PC version is abysmal and it's trash right now. So do not get it on PC if you were watching this and thinking about it. But the next gen console versions should be great. I'm a big fan of Batman, so I'll probably be picking it up this week for sure.
We also got a look at Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the latest in that gigantic series, now taking place in kind of Victorian London, and again seems very similar. A lot of looks, feels, plays very much like the Assassin's Creed you're used to. One big announcement for this is that there's going to be more of an emphasis on vehicles that you'll be able to get in carriages, and that you'll be able to get around the bigger cities in that way instead of having to warp around or anything like that.
Yeah, the carriages I think are a big deal this one. I'm very wary of the Assassin's Creed franchise after the debacle that was Unity. And I think a lot of people are, and I think Ubisoft is as well. They know that Syndicate has to be good or essentially Assassin's Creed is dead because of the problems we had with the last one. That was really terrible. But that's the thing with Assassin's Creed. I give it a lot of crap. I make fun of it a lot, and then every time a new installment gets called out or announced, I look at it and go, "That's pretty cool." But it's one of those situations where it's fool me twice, and then that's it, you know. So this is kind of, I think this is a game that is going to make or break the Assassin's Creed franchise. Um, and if Ubisoft were smart, they would hold back on future installments because I think it just became overload. I don't think it's their programmers and developers are very talented people. They make good games. I just feel like the Assassin's Creed got turned into a Madden series and was just rushed so bad that there was no way they were going to meet deadlines with a polished and done game.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems now with this, and I think the tail end of last generation is that now it's almost acceptable to send out a broken game and then patch it with DLC for the day one especially, and then for weeks or even months to come after that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that it's been really bothersome this generation. And if anyone out there got to watch Giant Bomb's coverage, Jeff Gershman over there called people out, developers out. When are you going to release games uh, that are playable? I mean, right now, every gigantic release AAA has had major issues, from Master Chief Collection to Assassin's Creed Unity. These games were just not ready to play. I mean, they got patched and on and on and on, but there was no way this would have slid back before internet connectivity. These games would have killed these companies, and it's a shame. We're kind of used to it on PC. When something comes out, you can get a day one patch because that's normal. But some of these games just were not ready to be sold on store shelves.
They had, let's see, Just Cause 3 was showing video. I don't think they had any gameplay demos, at least not that I saw. Um, I played the demo for Just Cause 2 last generation. They just let you run wild for half an hour in their gigantic, ridiculous open world, using pretty much what's equivalent to the hook shot with your parachute, being able to surf on vehicles and break in from on top. This Just Cause 3, from what I saw, seems very much the same. They added some new things. The wingsuit, you can now surf on top of planes, and the thing that they kind of put an emphasis on was the ability to again choose different ways of how you wanted to go through with something. They gave the example of a statue where you could have 3 different ways to destroy it, and so one of which, the one that they showed when I was there, was putting ropes in between its raised arm, and its head, and called it "Stop hitting yourself." And so you would just retract the lines, and it would hit itself and crumble. So they're keeping very much the kind of ridiculous, funny tones, and so it's supposed to be a much bigger world. Gives you a few updates, but overall it feels very much like Just Cause 2, and I just don't know about how long it would be fun to be in that sandbox. Like, maybe it's something you come back to from time to time, but I don't know if it's even worth exploring that entire world, where with the last one I felt like I got the gist of it in half an hour.
Yeah, it seemed like more of the same essentially, and I have both Just Causes, and Just Cause 2 is a lot of fun. It's just kind of crazy, wild, do whatever you want. But it is kind of the game that I go back to every once in a while and play and put in, half hour here, half hour there. Um, but I think that might be one of its strengths too, because that keeps you coming back. Because I know Just Cause 2 on the PC here had released their multiplayer stuff, so there's a lot of stuff going on. So it did sell, it moved well, so I'm excited for more of it. But it's compared to everything else coming out in 2016 that are taking larger risks. It seems gameplay wise, Just Cause 3 is kind of playing it the most safe out of all of them.
Yeah, very much so. It looked almost exactly the same as 2, even
Mm-hmm.
down to the world, down to the enemies to just the overall aesthetic of it, um, which, like you said, is just a safe way to go about it.
Yeah.
And along those lines, right outside the hall, also pretty close to The Walking Dead, was Payday 2, an expansion for that. And I think for me personally, there have been so many kind of re-releases and smaller DLC and things that don't really change it, that to where I was barely even interested in looking at their booth this year.
Yeah, I was surprised to see their booth. I think it was a Crime Wave edition, which I'm sure just kind of collects everything together. But I picked up Payday 1, me and my roommate did when it originally came out, and we put in hundreds of hours into that game. Just because at the time it was original, playing the bad guys and doing this kind of mission-based bank robberies and stuff. But since then, other games have kind of picked up the slack. GTA Online is a big one, doing that kind of high stuff. I do commend the developers for Payday, especially for Payday 2 stuff, because the content kept rolling out consistently. A lot of developers would have just released it, one or two expansion packs here and there, and then just did whatever. But there was a constant stream of stuff, so it does have a strong fan base. I just don't know if the Crime Wave edition is going to get me to pick it up, but we'll see.
And lastly, probably more of a footnote than an actual announcement, would be the Destiny expansion coming up. And for
It's
me,
going to be $40.
yeah, they do add a bit more content than they have in previous updates. Big changes to the characters, new kind of subclasses, which is the big thing that they're pushing. Another what was it called? Kind of raid. Um, but overall, nothing earth-shattering. I don't think it's going to be converting anybody that hasn't been playing. I think those of us that are still playing it will get it just because you have to keep up. But yeah, the $40 price point was something that I didn't see coming, and I think is going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah, I think $40 is going to be a hard sell for an expansion pack. And I don't know why it's so much. I don't know how much new content is in there. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, it doesn't have me interested at all. I like the aesthetic that Destiny is, but it's just so essentially barren. And I don't know if an expansion pack is going to get me to go and jump into the game. It's going to be for hardcore fans, which is great, but at $40, man, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, more content really to get everybody that's still playing to get on board with that.
Yeah, for $10 more,
Because
you can get yourself a brand new game.
so that wraps it up for uh, the general releases for the multi-platforms. So we'll take a look at some of the indie games, which had kind of a bigger presence than I expected here. It seems like there was just as much space devoted to indie games as there was to the bigger developers and to even Xbox or Sony. Um, they both allowed a lot of space for their indie games, which was very cool to see.
Yeah, there was a lot of room all over the place, whether it's just in the Indiecade section area or within the larger booths. But I think the bigger developers, I think Microsoft, I think Sony, and other AAA publishers have learned that that's where the innovation is happening, and that's where they can pluck developers and team members on from. So I think they know the value of indie games. And if you go to any indie game section in any of these conventions, that's probably where you're going to have the most honest to God fun.
Yeah, exactly. And with that, the big 600-pound gorilla in that room, everybody was talking about was Cuphead.
Oh my God, that looked so gorgeous.
Yeah, these two, I believe it was two brothers, just decided they wanted to make a game that looks like a 1930s cartoon. And they absolutely nailed it, from just the movements, from the types of people that you're fighting, even the characters themselves. Everything looked like it could have been, early Disney cartoons.
It's incredible that how gorgeous Cuphead looks, and it's literally done by just two brothers. There's just two Canadian guys that got together and said, "Hey, we want to make a game," and it is drop dead gorgeous the way it is. It's got that Steamboat Willie aesthetic for those of you that want kind of a reference point for it. But if it plays half as good as it looks, there's a good chance this is going to be on some end of the year lists for just greatness. Because I can't. This is probably the most excited I'm at about a game coming out soon, and it's an indie game, and it's an indie game done by two people, not a AAA studio with hundreds of team members on multi floors. It's just that's where the cool stuff is happening.
Yeah, and it looks like it could have been done by a huge team, but it really wasn't. And this was something I actually did get to get my hands on, and it was a solid platformer. It allows for two-player co-op. You have Cuphead and Mugman, uh, and you are just going through this world. You kind of have a map that you can choose where you're going from battle to battle. My only hesitation with it was that it seemed like, and maybe this was only for the demo, but it seemed like it was only different boss battles that you could go to. That it's something that I would have liked to have, and feels like it should be maybe a little more of kind of a scrolling platformer, um, kind of Mega Man ish kind of game. The other thing that struck me is that it was really hard. That I saw a lot of people that would kind of jump from battle to battle and really didn't even come close to taking down these bosses. And so, I was lucky to be with another guy that had obviously played a lot of kind of those platformers, and so we were able to get through a few. But there were still some that we couldn't get through, and so I think maybe it's kind of going the way of the feel of Dark Souls or something like that, where the part of the appeal is it's so difficult that it's kind of a badge of honor in the gaming world to be able to get through something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of when you beat stuff like that, you get a sense of like self-worth about it. Like, oh, I actually did something difficult. I know the game offers infinite lives and you can keep your weapons after death, so that should help with that kind of stuff. But if a game is hard and looks great and plays great, that's fantastic because then you can wear things around, almost as a badge of honor, especially if there's leaderboards and stuff.
Oh yeah. Another really kind of unique aesthetic of a game that had a fairly big presence too was Beyond Eyes. This was revolving around a young girl who is blind, but uses her other senses to kind of get through this world. It looked like a living watercolor painting, which was absolutely gorgeous. And as you kind of walk through this world, you only have this little island around you that you can sense, and so you're going through, and kind of this is kind of a hero's journey, leaving the nest and being able to fend for yourself with whatever difficulties you have, just to be able to grow and become stronger through those. I think it has a strong message. I think it looks beautiful and is going to have some really interesting, unique mechanics to it.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous from everything we saw. I like that they're taking risks. This is something different the way it's going on, not just visually but mechanically, and has a protagonist that is battling against the odds. That something is going to be hard to do. And I think a lot of these indie games are kind of the same way. They're more trying to build an emotional connection between you and the character, as opposed to just kind of throwing you into the shoes of a character that is, all powerful or going to be this big thing. It's, more of these indie games are trying to teach you about another way of life sometimes. And I kind of like where they're going with this kind of stuff.
Let's see. All right. We have another one. This is one I got to get my hands on. Was Drawn to Death, a really interesting, unique looking third-person arena shooter. The whole idea of it is that it takes place inside a teenager's notebook, and so it really kind of grabs you by the belt buckle and pulls you into this world and doesn't let you out. Just from the way it looks like things were everything from the characters to the arenas themselves were drawn, scratched into a middle schooler's notebook. Kind of ridiculous characters, ridiculous weapons, just not afraid to pull you into this world, and anything from the crazy, the bloodiness, the ridiculous names of weapons. There's a giant bow where you have a fist coming out of it, and so they call it the Fister. So it has that, that teenager kind of sense of humor and sensibility to it. That is kind of fun to play around with for a bit. Would be fun with friends. Hopefully, it has some couch co-op options to it. But another one of those games that is not afraid to take a little bit of a risk and do something different this time.
Yeah, that's a game that the aesthetic of it looks really great, but you wonder how long it can hold out. The idea of being in a notebook and that kind of thing is really cool. But with a lot of these indie games and some of them like this, its lasting power, like how long can you draw something out literally, for gameplay wise? I mean, this is a David Jaffe game. His studio is working on it, so it's a Sony exclusive. It looks really nice, but we'll see. I mean, I love what the indies are doing simply because the innovation is kind of bred out of limitations. They don't, when you have rules and when you have guidelines set on you, like we don't have the manpower to do this, that, you find creative ways to build worlds. And I think this is one of those ways that's, they're building something cool out of not a lot.
Yeah, along those same lines, probably one of my favorite experiences of the indie world and the show as a whole was Super Hot. This was a first-person shooter, but kind of more of a puzzle game, where the central mechanic is that you control time. So if you move, time moves. If you stand still, it stands still. And so you're kind of in this black and white world with these red geometric human figures coming at you. And so, you have guns with one shot, and you can throw the gun. You can pick up a bottle and throw that. You can throw some punches. So you're somewhat limited with the abilities that you have. And you just have to get through these individual levels with people coming at you from different angles. And it was something that I had no problem. Once you die, it's a one-hit kill both ways. And so if you die, they set you right up at the beginning. And I could have played that all day, just going back, going through. It was really, really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks really great. I followed it along for a little while. It's a Kickstarter backed project, and I think that's one of the huge things. Indies have always been kind of around, but it's been difficult to get them out there. And with the advent of Kickstarter, Indiegogo, these developers are now getting the backing to make their visions come true. And something like Super Hot kind of reminds me a little bit aesthetically like Killer 7 on the GameCube and stuff like that. But it's so just out there that it draws you in. And when you see it on the screen, you're like, what is that? We need to go check that out. And then when you play it, you're like, yeah, I need to get this game. And I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I think it really did have a really quick response in Kickstarter. I think something that the developers didn't expect, and worldwide, that I think a lot of people, like you said, just kind of saw this interesting aesthetic, drew them in, and then the game itself just kind of kept you there. And so I'm really excited to see where they go with it. Last up on my list is Firewatch. This was something that seemed very, very story driven, kind of, you're left by yourself. You are the only other character you seem to have interaction with is a woman's voice on a radio. And so you are kind of out on your own. We know that there are kind of people posted and watching Uh, you know, we assume for fires. We don't know what else they may be watching out for. There was a previous watch where you were set up, and so it just drops you in this world with a ton of mystery that just leaves you wanting answers.
Yeah, this is a game I've been following since I heard about it some time back, and this is one of the coolest games I've seen for a lot of reasons. The world itself looks great. You are basically a park ranger, kind of fire watch person out in Wyoming. You're kind of, putting your life back together. So you took this job. But what makes it very, very cool is the interaction between you and the other tower, the woman that you're speaking with over the walkie-talkie. It is hands down, far and away, the most natural conversation mechanic I have ever seen in a video game. It flows smooth. The voice actors that they use and how they incorporated them literally feels like dialogue straight out of a movie. And if you haven't got a chance to right now, get on YouTube, look up Firewatch, and watch I think it's like a 15-minute gameplay trailer that they have up, and you will be absolutely blown away by the interaction and the audio quality of this game. And it's going to be big. It's going to be, at least I hope so. But it is breaking new ground and setting a standard in the audio department for vocal work. And just for that, I'm excited for it.
Very cool. Well, that was everything I had on my list to talk about. So overall, the event was, as always, a lot of fun for me. E3 is kind of my Christmas of the year. It seemed a little bit smaller than previous years. There weren't a lot of kind of huge, earth-shattering announcements or something like kind of last year. Evolve was something everyone was really excited for. They had the giant monster. It didn't really have that any big things that really grab you. The Microsoft, the Sony booths were both a bit smaller than they have been in the past. Nintendo maybe felt about the same, a little bit smaller, but kind of a slower year that seemed like it was more building up to next year. So I'm excited for that. But it seems like we still have some time to wait before we have the kind of wow titles.
Yeah, it seemed like this year was a middle year for everything, because there was nothing. E3 was last week. We're doing this recap now, and there is nothing from that show that sticks with me. It's one of those situations where everything you see is really cool, everything's awesome, but nothing sticks with you. And there's a lot of stuff that I saw that I've already forgotten about or not paying attention to, and it seemed like an off year, and they're building for 2016 because so much content. I mean, it all looks great, but so much of the best content that we got to see is coming out late next year. So we're going to see it again next E3. So they're in this kind of weird middle phase, and it's a lot of fun. I love going every year. I love taking the team out there and having some fun, but it did seem less important to the industry this year than in years previous and hopefully years future.
It seems like it. So, come back, keep it posted on gambitmag.com if there's anything else you're looking for. We're going to keep our eyes on the games coming out within the next year. So check it out to keep on the latest trends.
Yeah, thanks for watching. We'll have more of these hopefully coming in through the month, on and off, about different subjects, and let us know what you want us to talk about, what you want to see. And you can catch us online 24/7 at gambitmag.com. So until next time, this has been our big E3 recap. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.